87% of realtors get into the business and get out of the business in 2 years. That doesn't exist in our world.
We have massive visions around growing our businesses, and we are always looking to add talent to our world. We do everything in our power to ensure the people we surround ourselves with defy the odds, get into production, and build massive lives for themselves.
If you are a realtor looking to get into the business, we have a blueprint for success.
With locations all across Canada, reach out to us. Let's talk about partnership and opportunities. We are looking forward to it. Welcome to another Sales Beast podcast, and today we have the lovely Andrea Bailey joining us for an episode to talk about a little bit of a different path that has been taken both from real estate and immigration side. And we've gotten the pleasure to be working with Andrea over the time that she's joined us in Canada, and really excited to share her story and how she's been able to grow and develop over the past 3 years. So Andrea, welcome.
Thanks, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't we kick it off? Tell us a little bit about your journey. It's been a wild, almost 3 years, jumping into running a couple businesses by yourself with others, and I'm sure we want to tell your story.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So March of this year will be 3 years that we moved to Canada, or since we moved to Canada from Dubai. We were living in the Middle East. It was 18 years that we were there, but we are actually from India, from Bombay, India. So it's been a crazy ride from there to Dubai and then here to Canada, but it's been interesting. It's always a great perspective when you live in different cities, and then you have all of that, to kind of reminisce and have memories of as well. Yeah, so what we did was when we actually moved to Canada, the idea was to come here and set up a tech business, and that's what brought us as a family. My husband was supposed to do that, and I was actually going to set up a travel business. So that's mostly what the plan was, because I owned a successful travel business back in Dubai for a while. And the idea was to actually promote the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia when we moved here to the North American market. So that's generally the gist of why we moved here. But when we got here, it was a week just before the first lockdown, and everything went upside down. No one knew what was happening. It was a brand new city, country, market, everything for us. So we really couldn't do much in terms of that particular tech business because we couldn't meet people. We couldn't really interact much. So we had to kind of sit down and decide, okay, if that's not working, what do we pivot? What do we do? What are the 2 or 3 bigger industries here in Canada that we can look at maybe getting into? And one of my top clients in my travel business back in Dubai was an immigration consultant. And he had a call with me once, and he just, he was like, why don't you just start an immigration business? Maybe look into that. So I jumped right into it. I said, you know what? Canada is the number 1 country that immigrants look to because of the opportunities and just the lifestyle. And, it just made sense to get the license as an immigration consultant. So that's what I did. And moving on from there, I just thought, okay, while I'm working to get the license, what can I do? So I reached out to a few people in the business, Sandy McKay being one of them. And he actually pointed me. He said, you know what, why don't you get in? We are looking at someone to help us as an ISA. And I had no idea what that was. I had really no clue. So I said, you know what, I'm open to learning and doing whatever it is I need to set myself up for success here. So I jumped into it. It was 8 hours of cold calling and talking to people on the phone. And it was brand new to me in that sense, because I did make calls in my previous business, but these were all people I knew back there. Here it was a completely different, unknown group of people that I was talking to. So that's just the gist of it, of how I got into it. But from there, moving on to seeing how realtors work and how the real estate market works, it just kind of made sense as well, from doing an immigration business setup and then having my immigration clients who moved to Canada, setting them up in real estate as well. It just made sense. They're already trusted. They're trusting us in the process of moving to Canada. So why not just help them settle in faster when they do move? That was generally the idea. And that's why I'm in these 2 businesses and own both the licenses.
How intertwined would you say your 2 businesses are? What percentage of your clients on the realtor side are also clients of your immigration business and are new to Canada?
So 99% of my immigration clients are my real estate clients and potential clients because they're all moving here looking to buy homes, looking to set up businesses. So in general, what we do in our immigration practice is we wanted to specialize when we started. I did not want to take on an immigration business and do every single case that came to me. I'm the only registered consultant in immigration that has come on the startup visa myself. So having come on that route, which was fairly new at the time, now specializing in bringing more people through that channel is something that has become our USP. So when we work with clients, these are business clients, high net worth individuals looking to set up a business in Canada and definitely have the funds to buy homes, to buy property, to buy investment properties, as well as to set up their own businesses. So yeah, so a lot of those clients actually become real estate clients of mine. It flows naturally almost.
Okay, so they flow through the immigration business to the realtor business.
That's correct.
And how do you source the leads or the clients for the immigration business?
So these are coming out of, I'd say, a mix of India and the Middle East at the moment. India has a very strong base of tech talent. The startup founders are extremely hardworking. They are very, very talented in what they do. So we work with founders from there, and then, of course, investors and founders from the Middle East as well. So these are just coming out of our networks of people we know right now. We don't have to do a lot of marketing because it's word of mouth. Once there's a set of group that has moved to Canada with us, a founder, a startup that has moved with us, then basically it is just word of mouth from them to others to kind of come and bring them along as clients as well. So yeah, we don't do a lot of marketing right now, but that's how we get our clients.
Okay.
So I want to bring it back a little bit because I'm an immigrant, Andrea's an immigrant, Mike, you're not an immigrant, and neither are maybe a lot of our listeners. So can you tell us, what does an immigration consultant actually do? What does that involve? When people are thinking about moving to Canada and they call Andrea Bailey, what are the steps that they need to take to work with you?
That's a great question. Okay, so what happens is we do a step-by-step process with them. We analyze in the initial call with them what their basic criteria is, what are they looking to achieve, what their background looks like. For example, what is their age? Are they married? Do they have children? So we're looking at the entire setup. Who needs to move to Canada within that family? Are they all looking to move together? Are they the age where they can apply through an easier process, a simpler process? If they're, for example, younger, if they hold master's degrees, and if they have very good English speaking skills, they don't have to come on the business route. They can actually apply through something called the express entry. So if they are older, for example, if they're over the age of 40, if they have more of a net worth, they have more of the experience, they might be good candidates to come here and set up a business. So what we do is basically analyze what is the best pathway for this particular candidate or applicant to be moving to Canada on, what can we kind of work with them on in the process to see how we can get them here in their timeline.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
And a comment, I guess. I've never seen a realtor set up this way with one business that feeds the realtor business. I think it's genius and something we should all consider. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, for all the realtors out there that are interested in doing something similar to what you're doing, what are some of the challenges you experience as a realtor to get these new people to Canada into homes?
So yeah, that's again a very good question. Now, a lot of our clients move on something called a work permit. Now, you can either move to Canada on a study permit, a work permit, or a PR, broadly speaking. And if you come on PR, which is your permanent residence, you can actually get into the real estate market and purchase your primary home or investment properties straight off the bat. However, if you move on a work permit, as of January 1st of this year, it becomes very challenging to get into real estate and own property because there's been an announcement that actually it kind of constricts the activity. So these people who move on work permits have to then wait a little bit longer to be able to get into real estate. Now, having said that, there are opportunities, for example, the rent to own program that might work for someone like that. So that's what I have now kind of also looked into, saying, okay, if so many of my clients are getting here on work permits, rather than them just renting a property for 2 years till they get their PR, why don't we get them into a rent to own opportunity here? And that just sets them up for success as well sooner.
That leads me to 2 other questions. Sorry, I thought you were going to speak, Anna. We always talk over each other. Can you, for anyone listening that doesn't know what just happened, can you explain some of the changes that the government of Canada has put in place? And then second question, for anyone listening that doesn't know what rent to own is, can you explain how that works and how it can impact someone in the position that your clients are in?
Okay, yeah. So the first question to address that one is anyone that is on a temporary permit in Canada. So that could be a student on a student permit, a person who's just come here on a work permit awaiting PR. They are considered temporary by the Canadian government. And there is a ban on purchase of property for the next 2 years, starting from the 1st of Jan 2023. That means that these people in this particular group are priced out, like they're just out of the market. They cannot get into buying any real estate till they achieve their PR status. And that for students especially can be a really long drawn out affair because they finish their studies, then they apply for their postgraduate work permits, finish their year of working, and then go into apply for PR. So we're looking at potentially 3 years out from a PR status for students. So that's what it basically entails, is anyone on this kind of a temporary status would not be able to buy real estate. Now,
and that applies for any kind of foreign buyers. Nobody that doesn't own, or that doesn't have a citizenship or a permanent residence within Canada cannot purchase within Canada.
Correct. That's exactly right. So anyone who lives outside of Canada with no ties to Canada, as in does not have a PR status, and also those who are within Canada but don't have PR, it applies to all of these people. Mm-hmm. The second question that Mike asked me was explain something about rent to own and why would this be a good option for those on work permits, for example, is because when I spoke to or started dealing with the rent to own companies like Clover Properties and other investors around me, they were more flexible in their outlook on work permit versus PR status and people who fall into these groups. So as long as the person who is on a work permit has a valid work permit and is definitely showing signs of wanting to have the PR status in the future, they have a good income, they have a solid job, they have stability as far as credit and whatever else they can show is concerned, they have foreign funds that they can prove. All of these factors are taken into account by the rent to own companies, and they look at these clients or potential clients with more of a favorable outlook. You know, they look at them and say, you know what, in 2 years' time, they will get their PR, and we can definitely then transfer ownership of the property into their names when they do qualify. So they are more flexible in that sense, and that's why I feel that's a great option for people on work permits and those that are looking and waiting for their PR.
Okay. I want to dig a little bit deeper on that, but I have a follow-up question to what you just said first. So like many immigrants coming into Canada, they don't typically have credit yet. So what are the ways that you guys are circumventing looking at credit, or are there other sources that you look at credit worthiness for people that are coming in on a working visa or a student visa?
You mean for the rent to own program?
Yeah, for the rent to own program specifically.
Yes. So the investors that I work with for those programs, yes, they may not be enough of a credit history because they are sometimes 3 or 4 months in, they may not have built up enough of credit to show. But in that scenario, we're looking at, okay, where have they come from? What does their life where they came from look like? What are their assets look like? What are their bank balances they look like? So as long as they can prove some income or some net worth somewhere else in the world, it gives a sign that these people are stable clients. They are not moving here just to, for the fun of it. It is definitely something that is on their list to own a home in the future. And therefore, these are potentially good rent to own applicants. So look at other factors. If the credit is not great, we do look at, okay, maybe they have a sizable down payment. Maybe there's something that they can bring to the table that would just offset the low credit.
Okay. Now my follow-up question to the previous section. I know you're just educating us right now. I want to make sure everybody knows there's a lot of knowledge here and we want to pull out as much as we can from you. So we actually haven't had any guests that have brought forward the rent to own program. So can you maybe explain that a little bit more in detail for those that don't know what the rent to own program actually entails?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm at the end of the day just a realtor that helps the tenant buyers, and the best people to speak to would be the rent to own specialists. But this is my understanding as I see it and with the people I have worked with. So basically, when I, for example, let's say I'm door knocking in a scenario, I meet a person who's basically renting their house at that point from a landlord. And the conversation I would have then is, okay, so let's say that you do want to get into home ownership. What's holding you back? And they say, you know what, we don't have enough of a down payment to actually go and buy a house ourselves right now. But that is the goal in 2 years' time. That person would be ideal. We're also looking at what kind of income are they making for the year. Now, some rent-to-own companies have definite numbers that they look at. For example, one of the companies says, if your income for the year is $100,000, that's and above, of course, that would be a good potential tenant buyer client. Whereas if you're looking at someone with less than that income for the year, and it could be a joint income, it does not have to be just one person's income in the house. The total family income needs to be 100,000 and more per year. That person would ideally be, the best candidate. If it's lower than that number, how do we actually work the numbers? It does not work out. So that's why that particular number. Now, let's say that I do meet someone, they have an income for the year of 100,000, but they don't have enough of a down payment right now. That person actually becomes a very strong candidate for the program. So what I do is then make the connection. I connect them with the rent-to-own company. They run the numbers and they see, okay, if their credit is decent, but they have a lower down payment, we can still make it work because the income makes sense. They are still making a strong enough income. Then what happens is once they run the numbers, they come back to me and say, okay, Andrea, if you are going to be the tenant buyer's agent at this point in time, we will find the investor who's already pre-approved, pre-qualified, ready to go at the drop of whenever we say, we need to go, they're ready to go ahead. They find the investor is ready to go. At that point, we look at the numbers. Okay, this tenant buyer's profile can afford him a house of 700,000 because the mortgage payments would be a certain number, and that falls within what the family income is. So the mortgage payments at that point would be worked out to be the rent that they're paying to the investor, plus, the rent that they owe the investor, plus the down. They have a certain number that they look at where they set aside for the down payment, that at the end of the 2-year period, the tenant buyer then has a certain amount that has already been set aside as a down payment when the transfer of ownership happens. So what the tenant buyer does is then basically goes shopping for a house in that budget and price point. And when the house that they identify, they like, we want to go ahead. What we do is then there are 2 contracts that are signed at that point. So one is where the investor steps in and signs the APS as the buyer, the agreement of purchase and sale, with the seller of the property, and he takes ownership. He goes on title. And then there's a second contract which is signed between the investor and the tenant buyer. That is basically saying at the end of 2 years, this house that has been purchased for X amount, say 700,000 now, in 2 years' time is going to be worth this particular number, let's say 775. And that is what the tenant buyer agrees to pay the investor when the transfer of ownership happens. So I don't know if I've explained that well enough, but that's the gist of how it works. And both these contracts are in place at the start of at the time that the house is purchased.
No, I think that was a really good and in-depth overview, probably better than any of us could have explained it. And we'll definitely have to have a follow-up episode with Clover Properties. I know their team over there and they're amazing. But the reason I wanted to dive into that a little bit today, I mean, January 25th is today. The episode's going to come out in a couple weeks. However, we saw another 25% increase. And therefore, the more that this is happening, the more that we're able to push buyers out of affordability. And rent to own seems like a great, almost like a forced savings plan, and just overall a great option, alternative solution to helping people get into home ownership sooner than they might actually think.
Yeah, that's true. And if someone is anyway planning to rent for 2 years, why not just pay a little bit more and have the assurance that your house that you're purchasing in 2 years' time, given current market conditions and what we typically see as market, the appreciation in the market, they're probably getting the house at a really great amount than they would if they were just to go out into the market 2 years later and start looking at houses. So that house that they bought for $775 in 2 years' time could potentially be worth a lot more than that number that they purchased it for under the program. So there is savings when you're a tenant buyer. Definitely there's savings in this market. And
I mean, like right now, prices are a lot lower too. And the second things start pivoting again or shifting again and interest rates go down, prices are going to go up.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So the way it works is also they kind of look at the market appreciation in that city. So Kitchener-Waterloo, for example, they say it's a 5%. It's a very conservative number. So it's a 5% per year market appreciation. And that's the number they would take into account when they're calculating what the house is bought at today and what would the house be worth in 2 years' time. So they add 5+% and then 5% again. Again, the other good thing about the program as well, and Anna, is that it's very flexible in its timelines. So let's say in 2 years' time, the tenant buyer still does not feel ready enough or is not in a position that they can take the home ownership on. There is flexibility to extend the contract.
Okay.
And as well, the other way, if the tenant buyer feels ready before the 2-year period is out, they can have the conversation with the investor saying, you know what, we are actually ready now. Can we go ahead? Mm-hmm. And that's something that, again, is a plus in the program.
Amazing. I've asked a lot of questions, Mike, so I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions.
So there's a lot you said today that I honestly didn't know about you until I read your bio a couple days ago. There's one thing, I see this all the time. It's not like you jumped from Dubai to Canada with no track record and then jumped into real estate and all of a sudden the successful person I know today. You were successful before you got here. In your travel business, it sounded like you had your own show of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a rock star before I ever met you. Which is really cool to learn. I think you need to get up on the rooftop and scream that, because it's an amazing story that needs to be shared. Because I mentioned it earlier, I'm not an immigrant to Canada, but I did grow up on the East Coast, and it was a huge culture shock for me moving from Nova Scotia to Ontario. So I can only imagine what you went through, and your progression in Ontario was 10 times faster than mine. So can you maybe chat about how what you were doing before you got here has prepared you for the transition that you've gone through in Canada, and how some of the skills you developed over there you have allowed you to build your real estate career so quickly and your career as an immigration consultant?
Yeah, you know what, Mike, I think that's a great question, because a lot of new immigrants have the same questions. Can I use my skills from where I was to where I'm moving to? Absolutely, yes. So what I did was, when I was in Dubai and started my travel business, I quickly found out Dubai as a travel destination is the best place to be, because within 6 hours time, you could be anywhere in Africa, you could be in the Indian Ocean, you could be in Europe. So given the location, travel was and is a big business over there. Now, when I started out, I was one of maybe 40 of us that were in that particular company as franchise owners. And we were really just business owners at the end of the day, each of us building our own business, the same way we do in real estate here, having your own networks and having just to build from the ground up. So that business and having that experience actually taught me a lot about just setting up business and how it works. And you got to have patience. It's about 12 to 18 months before you start to see returns and before you really start to see results. And what I had to do was, because I was in a place where there was so much competition, and it was, in Dubai, when a client reaches out to you for a travel request, if you don't respond within an hour, at least to acknowledge, they're gone. There's no loyalty as such because there's so many options over there. And they can pretty much get what they need very quickly from someone else. So it really was about setting myself apart from the crowd and saying, what can I do differently that makes me now an expert in travel? So I had to look at, okay, what do people listen to a lot there? And radio is a big thing. So I got onto the radio. I started a show with a local radio station once a week, and we focused on family travel. For us, it was because Dubai, like I said, is a place where people travel from. It's a destination as well that people travel to. But families do travel a lot, and there are a lot of family trips, maybe 2 or 3 times a year that people do plan. So that became my niche in that sense. So I said, let me focus on, I'm traveling with my girls. How can I share what we go through to add value to what other people are planning in their trips? And that kind of set me apart from the crowd. It kind of gave me the edge. She's the expert now in family travel. And that brought business to my door as well. So it was definitely fun to do. And it also helped my business grow. Now, just identifying what is it that sets you apart, having the courage to just go and say, okay, you know what, I'm terrified of being on radio, but I'm going to do it anyway. And just like you guys, like all of you in your businesses have done things that would terrify other people, right? And even yourselves at the point. But at some point you jump in and say, I've got to do this to grow my business. I've got to do this for personal growth, whatever it may be. So that's exactly what my outlook was, is I got to do something different, and it did work. Now, the same thing is what I bring to Canada with me. Having had the experience of that, how can I do things differently here? And because I'm an immigration consultant and a realtor, that sets me apart already. Again, within the immigration business, I have come on a channel that no other immigration consultant can claim to have come on. Again, that sets me apart within the immigration business. So it's something worth talking about. It adds credibility instantly when I talk to my clients saying, I have come on this route. You wouldn't find any other consultant saying that, but I have come on this route. I know how it works on the inside. We know what the officers are looking for. We know what are the questions that are going to come your way. So wouldn't you rather work with someone who has gone through the process than go with someone who's just got the knowledge from the websites or the books that they read or whatever? So it just kind of sets us apart as an immigration business, as consultants, as well as in the real estate world, saying, we know what Canada is like for new immigrants. We can help you settle in faster. Wouldn't you rather work with us?
Yeah, it's almost like the way I'm interpreting it or viewing it, you're just finding what are really big problems in people's lives and providing solutions. I'm going through the travel with kids thing, and that's where the light bulb went off. Before I had kids, I would have thought that's cool. Now that I have kids, I think that's necessary. And there are people we follow on YouTube that have helped us solve that problem. We have this cool little rig, you put the car seat in it, put the kid in the car seat, and it goes on these wheels, and you drag the kid all over the airport. It was someone like you that showed me that thing, changed my life. Before that, I didn't want to travel, but I dreaded it. Now, like, book the flights, good to go tomorrow. The same thing with your immigration consultant business. I can't relate to that. I've never had to go through it, but it's solving a massive need that some people have, which I imagine
also like helping accomplish a massive dream. I want to add to that, like, people come here to live a better life, and you're able to give them the path to do it. And then from the real estate side, you're helping them get into home ownership, which is typically the #1 priority in an immigrant's mind, right?
Correct. Yeah, because a lot of people especially from India, I want to say, and the Middle East, they've owned houses there. The upbringing is all about own your own home. You won't find a lot of people renting as an option for life. So it's something that has been inculcated since they were young. So we know the mindset of these people when they move here is definitely to get into home ownership the soonest they can, and then to start building their lives and their businesses. So, I mean, just this year, we've got 500,000 new immigrants as the target just for 2023. And typically, it's about 60% of those new immigrants every year that move to Ontario. So we're looking at a huge influx. These people are going to be here looking for homes, so that, it's just the rent to own in situations where people are on work permits would be also a perfect solution. But just saying that's the target for Canada, they need the people here for the economies to actually be successful and work well.
I think you need to hop back on the radio and get the word out. It sounds like there'll be a lot of people that need your help.
Yeah, I have considered that actually.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe soon.
Mm-hmm. You have any other questions, Anna?
Well, I was just going to say, 3 years, less than 3 years in Canada, 3 different businesses that you've either created, set up, been a part of, and it's really cool to see your growth. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think I also kind of want to give some credit here to just people that I've been with from the time that I got connected with in real estate. So yourself, Anna, as well. Mike, I've been part of the team, from almost from the beginning the time that I've been here. So it's just, looking at how people set their lives up, just things like time blocking and reading and personal development and growth, and the focus that everyone around me used to put on those things, those aspects, have actually helped immensely. So I would say our learning curve, my husband and I, in the last 3 years has probably been more than the last 15 years in Dubai. It's just been so much learning. And lots of new immigrants are in the same position as we are. They come here and they really want to succeed. And they look around them and they look at who are the success stories and what can we actually copy and duplicate and do as well as they do.
I mean, that's a good takeaway. Like if we have any people considering coming to Canada, I know we do have listeners outside of Canada considering coming to Canada, like find the right people to surround yourself with even before you step foot in the country, because then you'll just be better set up for whatever you want to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, it's a bit of a downside as well. Like every business and industry has its own kind of plus and minus factors there. There are a lot of ghost agents within the immigration business. There are a lot of consultants who don't do things by the book or the right way, I should say. And you've got to be really careful as a new immigrant that's making that decision to move to Canada. Who you work with will determine whether you make it or not. And how you move here and what kind of journey you're going to have in, the process that you go through, everything is determined by who you work with. So choose wisely, because there are a ton of agents out there and not everyone's looking after your best interests.
So what's the best way for people on either side to get in touch with you, whether they're looking to connect with you as a realtor or connect with you on the immigration side?
So for immigration, I have my business. It's called Yalla Canada. In Arabic, Yalla means come on. So it's come on over to Canada. And I'm on Instagram with that name. So it's at Yalla Canada and at Yalla_Canada. And as well on Facebook, I've got a page there as well that I'm pretty active with. And for the real estate side, it's the Bailey Advantage. So you'll find me on Instagram with the Bailey Advantage handle, as well as on Facebook. And anyone drops me a line, I respond as quickly as I can. So
awesome. We'll make sure to put all the links down below in the comments. And final question, Mike, would you like to do the honors?
Yes. Who do you know that we should have on this podcast?
Ooh. I think one of the best people I could suggest is Jerry Hugenhout, I think is how you say the last name. And he specializes in working with investors within Canada and outside to set them up with their corporations and just to, if they're looking at buying investment properties and building their net worth.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Good, Rocco. Thanks so much, Andrea. It was great to chat with you, and looking forward to releasing your episode.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling. Every day I'm hustling.